Doctor Who recently turned 60 years old. Hi everyone, this is Michael with the Arkham Horrors, and today I'm going to give you a breakdown of the creation of a track that was inspired by composer Dudley Simpson, who was, no pun intended, instrumental in creating the aesthetic of 1970s Doctor Who with his music. So I wanted to try and create a track in the style of something he might do, and so I decided to take a clip from one of the Doctor Who stories from his era that he originally did the music for. I took the opening scene from a story called Image of the Fendal, and I scored along to the opening scene. Full disclosure, I actually had this video up on November 23rd of 2023, the actual 60th anniversary, and it was immediately taken down because of copyright reasons, because of using footage from the show, and then after that because of the holidays and everything. I'm just now getting back to it. So this track that we're going to be looking at today is called The View from the Balcony. It is on Volume 1 of the soundtracks inspired by the Arkham Horror the card game campaign, The Path to Carcosa. So I wanted to create something that was kind of not overly busy, not big, not full of layers of sound that are kind of echoing all over the place. A lot of my music has that kind of stuff where it's just really, really deep layers of stuff. For this, I wanted it to be a little sparse because the premise of where you are at in this particular scenario has to do with you wake up, you're in a theater, and there's no one else there, so you're trying to find out what happened. You know, things are quiet and things are eerie, and so I was trying to build this kind of sense of mystery. So full disclosure, the original video I made did have all the footage that I scored the music to, and I'm replacing it here with imagery that I created that kind of was inspired by the title sequence of Doctor Who. So that's why we've got this abstract kind of imagery going on here. So let's dive in. So with this particular track, I leaned heavily on inspiration from Dudley Simpson, primarily from the opening scene to an episode called Image of the Fendal. So let's take a look at this particular track and let's break it down and see how we came up with these things. So the very first section here, which is just a couple of scientists talking about a skull, and then a third colleague comes in. Really, what you're seeing on screen is not indicative of what the music's trying to tell. I didn't really want to have something light and then kind of transition into something darker. It doesn't fit with the tone of the larger soundtrack album that I was working on. So it really had to start off from the very beginning kind of dark and eerie, but at the same time I was also trying to give it a sense of ramping up towards something. So the first thing I did was I took some bowed crotales to give it chimey sound. And then I decided to pair those with a handful of strings, and then some woodwinds, a bed of woodwinds just kind of simmering. Let's actually listen to just the woodwinds, just so you can hear what that sounds like. We'll listen to that and the chimes, or the crotalis bowed. paired that with some strings. So I used a solo cello here. And this is from the Cello collection from Orchestral Tools, along with the intimate strings from Spitfire Audio and their free line of labs. I did a bell swarm as well, and then pizzicato intimate strings, lower kind of bass sound. So let's listen to these together so you can hear how these sounded. And then that just leads us into the next section. I thought it was, again, just kind of nice to have this kind of melodic kind of thing to just bring us in quietly into the rest of the track. These, again, this kind of layering of a vibraphone with a string section, or sometimes a clarinet or something like that, is very common for the type of music that Dudley would compose for Doctor Who. So then this goes into next section, which we're going to use a little percussion roll. We're going to use another free music library from Spitfire from their Labs series, some tape swells, just to, again, give it some texture as we're going into the next section, which are going to be some horns. Let's listen to this little section and see what we've got here. So we're using the horns in this particular section as a key to the listener to say something is here. So we've got these tape swells, which are very subtle, and they're really just there to, again, just generate some texture, the way that we had the woodwinds doing earlier. And then this is going to transition into some piano. This is from Spitfire's OPW library. It's just a very cold piano on an echo, reverb echo. And again, it's just kind of, we're just trying to set things up here. We've just got this little slight, just a little, again, undertone kind of thing happening here while we're moving into what's about to happen. So now we're going to be cutting into a scene with a hiker, a rambler, just walking through the woods. And that's going to get marked by going into a drum roll and then some percussion. So for the second section here, what we've got is we've got these strings. And we've got this electric antique organ here, and this particular sound, this library is, again, it's another free library available from Spitfire Labs, and what they did is they sampled one of the oldest known electric organs, and it sounds very close to the kind of instrument that Dudley Simpson would have used back when composing a score like this. So he would frequently do a melody line using a more traditional instrument like a French horn or like a clarinet or a cello or something like that, and then he would complement it by taking something more synthesizery and have it do like an echo back. So that's what we've got going on here. And I think it does a really nice job of, again, just kind of building suspense and tension in that very kind of awesome, cheap 1970s kind of way. Remember that Doctor Who back then was working on a very, very small budget. The composer, sadly, he had so little to work with. Sometimes by doing that, it forces you to think outside the box, and you come up with these really weird kind of combinations of instruments, and you make some really strange decisions in composing, and I can certainly attest to that myself. So let's hear what it sounds like with the full arrangement for this little section as this man is walking through the woods. So the key components that I was trying to do here for this section was I really wanted to use some of the orchestra percussion that Dudley was known for using, especially trying to, again, try to use as few instruments as possible, and then layer them with something that sounded like it didn't belong, which in this case is that antique organ sound. So the main thing that I was trying to convey in this section was I wanted to make use of the traditional orchestra percussion. I wanted to keep the components of the orchestra and then match it with something that was an outlier, which in this case would be that antique organ sound. So for example, we have this really nice horn swell that comes up right here. And we've got that pairing up with these strings. And we also have this really beautiful vibraphone swell that comes up. And that's what's really kind of driving the moodiness, is that tuba swell with the vibraphone. But the part that's really kind of my favorite is actually going to be the percussion. So if we listen to like just the percussion, including the vibraphone swells or swarm, you're going to hear some really fun kind of instrumentation. So let's take it from here. And then we've also got these percussion rolls that come in as well. So there we've got what they call a tam-tam cymbal, which again just adds this layer of eeriness as we're building. And just that on its own really provides a lot of mood and depth to the track. So then if you were to add some additional kind of texture, we've got this Andes Musicales, which again is another free library from Spitfire. Which really helps to convey, you know, that something dark is happening, something kind of interestingly sinister might be happening out in the woods. So all of these things combined with that great organ sounding instrument and the strings really provide some really nice atmosphere and mood. So I really had a lot of fun kind of putting that section together. So now we're going to move into the next section here. So we've got this little resolution of the melody. So as we're going into this next section, I deviate probably more than anywhere else in the track from how the composer for Doctor Who would have made something like that. The crux of it really was I just wanted a simple piano sound with some echo on it. So I've got this more 80s than 70s, but the scene that I was scoring transitions back to the lab where the scientists are working, and they are working on a bank of computers, and there's all these flashing lights, and there's definitely a sense that they are powering up an experiment. So I wanted the music to reflect that. So let's play this section for a little bit here, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, we're going to stop it there before it gets any spookier. So the key moment that I'm trying to illustrate here is that there are two scientists working on these computers, and in another room is a third scientist who she's doing some paperwork, and there's a skull in the room, and the experiment that they're doing is affecting the skull, which is in turn then affecting her as well. So we've got this very steady, very repetitive little section here. Nothing particularly amazing about it. Good vibe, but nothing particularly spectacular about it. But then we've got this little organ bass line that kind of comes in. And that's the thing that really starts telling the story of the music. And then we use the organ and we pair it with some scary strings from, again, from Spitfire Labs. These little kind of arrangements like this was very strange for me. But it was also, you know, it captured the imagination because it's like, it's something alien, you know, and also the fact that the series was British, coming through on American airwaves, to an 8-year-old kid. Everything was just weird about this. So we've got this organ, and we've got these scary strings, and we've got this just very smooth, very soft kind of thing going on here, and then we've got, over all that, we've got these piano notes echoing. I do a small breakdown, and what I used for this small breakdown again is another free library from Spitfire, where they sample sounds from London and combined it with samples and twisted it and mangled it. And this particular sound right here is from that library. It's just nice and airy and dissonant, and again, that's what I needed, was something to break up the mellowness of what's going on with these other instruments. I needed something just to add a little something uncomfortable. And I think it plays really well with, like, it drops off and then all you're hearing are these two instruments before going back in and kind of repeating that little melody line right there. And then once we repeat it, now we're going into another section where we also see that on top of the fact the skull is having some sort of effect on the female scientist, it's also having some sort of effect on the hiker in the woods. And so I went back again and I brought that tuba swell back into play because it's a good way of, like, transitioning from one section to another, to just have something just kind of come in and crescendo up. And then we're going to use this percussion swarm, again also a Spitfire library. So their percussion swarm is essentially, it's a series of instruments, percussion instruments, vibraphone, glockenspiel, bongos, things like that, that have patches where they sound like themselves being just hit once, or sometimes they're being crescendoed, and then they've got a whole section of them where they took these same instruments and they mangled them up and sampled them and synthesized them. And so what we've got going on here with these two percussion swarm instruments is and that is going to pair up with the tracks that we've already put in place. So we've got this little swell. We bring back the little spooky sound from the North Circular patch for the London labs. And again, I would argue that probably without the piano, what we're listening here to sounds much more similar to, again, what the original composer might have done for a section like this. That actually very much has a feel of what Dudley Simpson would have done, especially when we start bringing in some of these little percussive cymbal hits on top of the little bumps and clicks and things. So we've got this stuff going on. So that really does kind of have that feel of like classic Doctor Who. The reason I continued on with the piano vibe is I just think it sounds better. I like the vibe of it, even though it doesn't fit necessarily with what the original idea of this composition was going to be. That's the beauty of doing all this, is you stumble upon something, you're like, oh, I like that. So I just wanted to carry it on through until the end of the track. And as the rest of the sounds come in, you hear less and less of that piano too. So then we've got the big crescendo here, where this poor hiker meets his demise. And for that, I just used some Grand Casa, a roll, which again was very Dudley Simpson. And I followed up with a bit of synthesizer from another Spitfire audio library called Entropy. So adding these two sounds was just a good way to kind of get out of the track and just have kind of the rest, have this stuff just kind of fade out. So that's it. So that's my little tribute to Doctor Who. If you enjoyed watching this little peek behind the curtain, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment below. I hope to, in future, actually give folks a little bit more of an in-depth overview of how I do things by actually kind of clicking into the library and explaining, you know, why I chose the sounds and how these different libraries work. I tend to work with a lot of tracks. Like in this particular one, I think I used 30 tracks, which is actually for me not too bad. I tried to keep it simple on purpose because of the idea that I was working with, is I wanted to keep a very small arrangement. So if people are more interested in how I come up with deciding what instruments make it into an arrangement and what these individual libraries sound like, I would be happy to do more videos where I actually talk about the instruments themselves and show you a little peek behind the scenes of the patches and how they work. So please feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section and let me know if this is something you'd like to see more of. Thanks a lot, folks.